How you doing, man?
I'm feeling
nice
good.
Shirt.
Thanks, man.
Good little shirt for the day, for the show.
For the show.
You're like Mr. Rogers, man. You need like indoor clothes, outdoor clothes.
I need a cardigan.
Yeah, you need a podcast shirt. I was gonna ask you, what's your favorite old school muscle car?
Old school muscle car?
Yeah, like a car that maybe you saw as a kid in the 90s.
Well, like, if we're talking old school, the SS69 SS Camaro.
Man, that thing's a beautiful car, isn't it?
I remember my boss at Van City bought one.
Yeah.
He flew out to Texas or something and drove it to the closest border and then had it shipped down.
Yeah, man, that one, the Chevelle was pretty sick, and then when Camaro made the IROC.
Oh yeah, man.
The mid-90s
In the 90s, IROCs, they sounded so different,
The
right?
Firebird and the IROC, those were crazy. You know, like now, the brown guy, if you want to call them that, we gear towards maybe German imports and things like that. But it's funny to see that's where things have transitioned to now. And you know, individuals want to get a 6 Series or a Mercedes or that. It's no longer where before it was like, yeah, buddy pulled up in a Corvette or a Mustang or the 5.0 Mustang.
Why do we think like that?
I don't know.
I think I know. I think it's because just like anything, we're influenced by the generation before us. Right? So we're influenced and grew up around and looked up to guys that were like young.
So you're born in 1988. I'm born in 89.
Yeah.
Right? And we call ourselves the middle child almost, right? Because we're like right before 1990. And then we have the kids born in the 2000 and the mid 90s that are younger than us. Yeah. And then we have the guys that were born early 80s and the 70s.
Yeah.
So like guys born in 74, 75 and then up. So we have some older friends and cousins, and we've noticed that they're quite different than us.
Yeah, definitely.
And things are now changing. What do you make of that?
When I first realized that, like, you know, how much I was influenced by guys that were older than us, or even if we take it a step further and we look at our parents or our relatives that, you know, immigrated here and they have a certain mentality. Like, I remember this one time, I was a young kid and I was one of my uncles, we were hanging out, and he's like, you know what the difference between marrying a girl from India and marrying
I think he started with, you know, the difference between me and you is?
Me and you is, yeah, that's right. It's like the difference between me and you. He's like, you're gonna marry someone from here, from Canada, and if you want a sandwich, you're gonna have to go get up and make it. And he's like, you know me, if I want a sandwich, all I gotta do is call my wife and she'll make me one.
Wow.
And I remember thinking as a kid, like, am I gonna fuck up? Like, am I gonna do something wrong here?
As a kid, did you see that as a flex, or what did you see it as, guidance, or?
No, I saw that as like, I saw that as like, it was clearly a shot at me. Because growing up, most kids will experience this that come from the community. You get shit on a lot, you know. School in grade 4 in India, you know what we had to do? And here you guys are just doing this?
Yeah. There's always this comparison
There's always that comparison game up for everything. And that's probably a lot to do with their own insecurities because they just don't understand what it's like to, you know, go through the school system here and grow up here and stuff like that. So it's a constant like insecurity of theirs that they have to kind of flex on us as much as they can. But I remember that influenced me as a kid because if I look at that one phrase that was said to me when I was probably 13, and now I'm 32, turning 33. I'm that person's laughing stock because I'm going home, I'm making dinner. First thing I do is I clean the floors and stuff like that. Like, I might even be the laughing stock of some of those guys we looked up to in the 90s. Like, you clean the fucking floors? What's wrong with you, right? So
Cinderella.
We don't really understand the extent of how much we're influenced by some of the negative things that people have done because I believe human creatures to be visual creatures. We're visual creatures, right? Human beings. We look, we see, we absorb, and that shit is imprinted in our DNA at some point or another. And that can be extremely negative if you're coming around stuff that is like what that uncle said of mine to me, because he was a fucking tool for saying that, because like my life is fucking great now, but he had me convinced as a 14-year-old that if I marry someone from here, I'm gonna be miserable. And I'm doing all the things that he said that I would be doing. That motherfucker was right.
Right.
But I'm happier than a pig in shit every single day, and I was convinced at that age that if I do that.
Yeah, I think there's so many things that unknowingly we saw, and it was motivating us, or we were looking at like, oh, maybe I want to be like that. Yeah, I mean, simple things. In the early 2000s, people started putting rims on their cars.
Yeah.
Everybody wanted to put rims on their cars.
Yeah.
In the mid 90s, everyone was putting the subwoofers in the trunk.
Yeah.
And then you'd hear the car going down.
That shit died quick though, right? That's just like, you never hear that shit anymore. Yeah.
And you thought that, hey man, like that's what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna buy like a Mustang or like a Corvette, and I'm gonna have a thing in the back, and then that's because you're going up. Young boy, you're looking for men to model yourself after.
Exactly.
And I found that the people we were trying to model after, there's some people that were, they're good people and some great things to take from them, but some of them had
questionable characters,
questionable things, and the like masculinity, the way they would explain it to you, or even if the way that you kind of
pick up on it
was definitely unhealthy, because you saw, okay, well, these guys, they play some sort of sports, and at the end they start drinking. And it's normal, like everyone's drinking beer, and then it's like when they get together on a Saturday, it's like, you drink hard, that's just what you do, and you drink multiple hards. And if you can't drink hard, then you get made fun of. Then if you're not drinking enough, you get made fun of. And then if you're puking, you get made fun of for not being able to handle your booze. And so then sometimes you're at places people are purposely trying to give you more alcohol just to,
or you're trying to drink more to keep up, and
or
not really enjoying it socially, and it's not a fucking surprise why, there's like alcohol and substance abuse issue that we have in our community. It's self-perpetuated, right?
100%.
But that comes from that stuff that we've learned from the people in the 90s, people that came older than us. So lately, for you and I, it's been a fucking full-time job I can't say lately, it's been a few years now, of unlearning. It's almost a job of our first generation like us, like to unlearn a lot of that stuff, because your life could look extremely miserable if you're living according to those standards.
I would say so.
My life would. I can say that for me to even admit I'm madly in love with my wife would be like a fucking joke to someone. Right? Now
usually, here's the thing, what I find is anytime the topic of marriage is being discussed in groups of these men that are in their 40s now, let's say, because they're born in the mid 70s, it's always a negative.
It's a trash talking session.
It's always a trash talking session of, oh man, my freaking wife, man, or this and that, and it's just, and it's not ever, positive things of, hey, marriage is so beautiful, and you really have to experience this, experience that. There's always talked down upon, and I just want to go hang out with my boys, or my wife, I gotta do this, and the craziest thing is a lot of these individuals saw that their dad would go to work, and that was his job, that was his role.
They never saw love.
And then when he came home, the food was there. So then a lot of these individuals have said, okay, well, if I can bring home the bacon, and if it's in a surplus amount, I can literally do whatever I want. So that's all.
And that probably wasn't even a conscious thought. It was so subconscious, because if you see something for 25 years, you start to believe that's the norm. Even if you've gone outside and experienced the world and seen everything else and seen what other things are like, you still come back home to your base. And when your base is as such, you think that is the norm. So that's where you see people that have these passive aggressive issues with their partner, and they have stuff where they don't see it eye to eye and understanding. And that's why I believe therapy is most important to the people that don't need it, because therapy will expose you to your thought process.
Have you met a guy who was born in the mid 70s, like 1980 maybe, that spoke about their experiences in counseling? Because in my opinion, I've maybe only talked to one or two individuals in that age demographic that have gone that route. And maybe it was someone that had to go through recovery, but it was never just a regular guy.
They were exposed to therapy through the rehab center that they were at and stuff, and then exposed to it, but like outside seeking it themselves. I can't name you one. Why? A lot of it's probably got to do with toxic masculinity, ego, thinking they're fine, they're not a head case. And the other thing I think is people get accustomed to their life. Your life's miserable, that's just it's just the way my life is. Because again, the thing we learned from our parents is you accept the circumstances you're in and you make the best of them.
Right.
And you just continue to live through them. You continue to suffer until either you can't suffer anymore or you find other inhibitions that will kind of be your escape. Right? Boys trip. I'm just going to drink a couple of pegs every night. I'll be good. At least I'll be able to go to sleep.
Yeah.
Right? So I think that's probably why, because they have other escapes. They're looking for escapes, when the saddest part is why escape a beautiful life?
Mm-hmm. You know how we're talking about some of these things that we saw maybe weren't positive, they were negative. We only came to that realization when we became adults, right? When did that sort of start to happen for you, or when did you start to see, hey, maybe I'm not really thinking like these guys? Because up until a certain point, we thought just like that.
Yeah, 100%. I think
because we were chasing success, we were entrepreneurs.
Yeah.
So that we saw other entrepreneurs and their lives and say, okay, well, this is what they're doing.
Yeah.
This is probably what we'll do, and this is probably what we have to do.
I think for me, a lot of shit changed for me, like perspective-wise, when after I got married and I moved in, like me and my wife moved in together, and we lived on our own, and you start to kind of see, like almost play that comparison game. Okay, like, you know, we get up on Sunday. Okay, what happened in my household when we got up on Sunday? What did my mom and dad do? Okay, I don't really remember that much. What did, you know, my mommy do? Okay, it was very separate. They were never together. Me and my wife are like inseparable on the weekends, and when we can't see each other, it fucking sucks for both of us. That's all we're talking about. Is like it sucks when we're not together, when we're not sleeping in the same bed, and she's out, say, in Vancouver girls' night or whatever. That's when a lot of shit changed for me, where I had that almost epiphany moment where like, hey, my life, the way I'm gonna live it is so fucking different than what I've learned and saw my whole life, that I can't go to that for a reference point anymore.
Yeah, because what you explain is the polar opposite of what we would probably hear from the OGs, right? It would be more like, I can't wait till my wife's out of town, right? And then I can do whatever I want, and then I can go hang out with my friends, and I can go watch the basketball game, or I can go watch the football game, or I can go do this. Do you, like, I find, because you're not really into sports, but how do you balance the whole like boys nights or hanging out with the boys and then
I think it's like unique for us, because like I fucking run a business with my boys. Like, to be honest, like and now I'm in my 30s, like my circle's small.
Yeah.
Like, and it's just less complicated.
Not a very likable guy anymore.
People fucking
jerk. Absolute jerk.
Right?
So between the two of us, we have like point half friends.
Yeah, exactly. And even that 0.5 is imaginary.
Exactly.
He's in the room right now.
And half of them never wants to be here.
Jerry's here again. And so I get to hang out with my boys all the time. And all of my friends are, to a detriment, better friends with my wife than they are with me. This is because she's a fucking dope individual, right?
Right.
So where it differs for me is that my life's intertwined. Our friends are all intertwined.
And is that the recipe for success then?
It is mine.
Or do you think
it's mine? It probably wouldn't work for a lot of people that haven't done the work of unlearning a lot of shit from their past.
Right.
But yeah, I mean, I don't see for myself any other way around it, where you have to intertwine your life. Like, I mean, you and Ruby have your guys' own relationship.
Right.
I have my own relationship with all of her friends. Right. So I think that's extremely important. And then, like, I mean, a boys trip, girls trip, boys night, girls night, that shit doesn't even fucking matter to you anymore, because it's just like, it's all fucking one. What is this, the Gordora? Girls hang over there, guys hang over here. What the fuck are we doing?
Those were the environments we were growing up in. Right?
Yeah, you go to an Indian birthday party. You know, guys are hanging out in the living room that nobody sits in 95% of the time, but the guys are sitting there.
But you guys probably got invited to certain wedding dinners afterwards, you know, like Ruby had to go off and just sit there.
That's
you had to go off and sit here. But
I'm a guy's guy when it comes to that.
How did it feel though, right? Did it feel kind of awkward?
No, because I've been doing it for so long, and like, you know, sometimes it's good having a break from each other, right? By the end of it, like, we're always like I mean,
the reason I ask that is I'm wondering if those dynamics need to start changing in order for it to trickle.
It's people want to
trickle down.
If people really find it important and they really want to have a meaningful relationship and not one of.
Because I've picked up on certain families and certain houses I've been at, the women and the men sit in the same room.
Yeah.
The men will just drink, but they'll drink right there. But everyone's having this like a conversation together, and they're not kind of separated into two different rooms.
Any house party that I've had, I mean, that's how it's always been.
I've usually observed that in your houses as well. But then there's some houses where there's that intense sort of segregation as well, and I feel, this is just my opinion, with that deep segregation, it only ingrains the roles even more.
Yeah, 100%.
Right? So then it makes it where like, oh no, women are only supposed to do this, and men are supposed to do that. But no, it's a very, very interesting sort of topic, I think. And So 2 questions. Where do you think now in 10 years, if say we're having this conversation in 10 years, are the guys that are going to be our age, are they going to be kind of talking like us, or are they going to be talking completely different? And then the second thing is were there any positive things that you've taken from the OGs? I like to refer to them as the OGs.
OGs, yeah, from the OGs, number one, the biggest thing I think is the work ethic.
Yeah.
Yeah, right, like nose to the grindstone shit. Like, how many guys that are OGs do you know that are lazy?
Very few. Yeah, these guys work like crazy. They work insane. So the work ethic.
Work ethic is amazing. Now, I'm not just saying like the burnout schedule and all that. I'm talking about these guys are tenacious.
Yeah.
They put their mind to something, they fucking do it. There's nobody telling them otherwise.
Right.
Right?
But then there's just the other areas that
yeah,
might need some improving.
For me, they're probably, for them, life is probably great.
100%.
And I don't mean that.
And there's nothing wrong with it either.
No, absolutely not.
This is our opinion.
And I think that's where the difference comes. Like, I've taken that from them, but there's obviously like the stuff that we've outlined today that, like, you know, that we have to do. You do have to unlearn a lot of it. It does take time, right? And it does come with recognition, first of all. And there is a period where you first recognize it and you think, my life's a fucking lie. No, it's not. Life is vast, life is long. Life is an evolution. You just gotta keep evolving, and sometimes there's growing pains, and sometimes you feel like, oh, I wasted all these years thinking like, no, you didn't, you learned. Because now I'll never go back to thinking the old way that I did, right? Like, women are not just objects or house cleaners to me.
Yeah.
Now,
and that'll probably be what you'll pass on to
a lot of that, exactly, but a lot of that was big in part to being raised by a single mom as well. So
that's true.
So it comes different to me, and that's why it was innately more important to me. But for future generations, what they're going to be talking about, I hope they're way past us. I hope they've evolved way past us, and they've gotten to a point where it is the norm for them to just be in love and experience love and real love, and not just, you know, get past love into your 15-year mark and just have a gender role that you just co-parenting or they're just eventually, like, you know, people just become like living partners, and you know, it works for some people. It wouldn't work for me, right? And I can't even say it would work for some people because most of those people aren't happy.
Yeah.
They find moments of happiness in their life,
Yeah.
but genuine happiness where you just sit there on the couch and like, my life is fucking great.
Yeah, the evolution is extremely interesting. I mean, the reason I say that is because now I keep having these flashbacks of how life was for us when we were 15, 14, things we saw, and now the things we see, and how it's slightly different, and how it's not slightly different, and it's just a different form of it, meaning like there was Indo-Canadian gangsters then, there's Indo-Canadian gangsters now. So there's more now than there was then. There's just more number of us.
Or the fact that it's just social media and like the media pumps it up even more. I mean,
exactly.
Like,
and I think with all that sort of stuff in the mix, as a community, we need to come together, and some of these issues we need to tackle them ourselves. And things like this, healthy masculinity. Healthy masculinity in the Indian community definitely needs to be talked about more. And
I think it starts
with,
before the collectiveness of us coming together, because like, I mean, a lot of times people love like, let's come together and figure this out. No, sit there with yourself and figure yourself out. Figure yourself out.
That's
no, what is it that or my ignorances, what are my outside influences that are making me think like this? Like, actually just stepping outside of yourself and analyzing your thought process. I mean, I probably can say yes with therapy, but largely and due to my experiences with LSD that have put me in that out-of-body experience and observed me, and not just me during my trip, my 12-hour, 8-hour trip on LSD, it's the unpacking of it 12 months later. And making my associations and rewiring my thought patterning and stuff like that. But I think I've opened up Pandora's box for a whole nother episode.
100%. So I think that's a great way to end it off there.
And maybe
before we start the second episode right now.
Because I feel like that we can go on for longer. But if it wasn't for those out of body experiences and stuff, I wouldn't have Remember that starting point I was telling about, like giving that spark to someone to start off there?
Yeah.
That was my starting point for that. Of like okay, let's start thinking this.
Now you're starting to assess things and look at things very differently.
And not, because like when you start doing that, you can be hypercritical of shit too. But it was more like, life's an evolution, life's a process, life is long and vast. Reminder, okay, now, how are you thinking about this? Why is it that when your wife said that, you thought like that? Why did you feel that? Not, why did she say that.
You're essentially becoming your own counselor.
And I think that's what therapy eventually is. It gives you tools that will
to trigger those things and
exactly
questions, and
where
then
you
work
become an
yourself.
observer,
Yeah.
right? And I think
Become the
that's key.
observer, observing the observed.
That's it. So I think that's where we ended. Become the observer.
Nice.